So yeah, first thing, sustainability. And this is a question I ask a lot of friends, which is, why did you put all your eggs in one basket? So one of my lessons, especially from not having a lot of money when I was sort of in high school and college, and I started working at about 15, working more hours than I was legally allowed to work, because I knew I was going to have to put myself through college. I learned to sort of be terrified of putting too much control in the hands of a single source that had more power than me. The idea that somebody else would have complete control over my financial future was very, very scary for me. And this has sort of turned into the idea that, like, when I design sort of Finji's financial future, I get very uncomfortable when I put too much trust into a single company, or a single investor, or even a single team member. We work with really interesting people because that helps me be more sustainable. We're bringing more people into our company to make us more sustainable. And a big reason for this is I worry constantly about how I can ride out sort of the tumultuous times in the industry. So every few years, the industry will like contract down, and then you'll see like sort of a rise of more exclusive content for consoles or whatever. And then it'll open up for indies again. It'll feel like every indie can publish on anything, and then they'll feel like it contracts again. And my whole goal is to make sure that those contractions don't really affect us in a way that would require us to change the type of games that we want to make. So there are two things that sort of go along with this: is how do you control for studio sustainability? And the main things are we have to diversify our revenue streams. There's this horrible, very businessy term, which is like cross-pollination. But we talk about it a lot, which is a cross-pollination of audience base. So we release a bunch of games, like almost one a year, and each one of those games are kind of in a different genre. So how do I get somebody from my hardcore strategy game to also play my Tunic, which is, like a Fox with a Sword game? And then how do I get the Fox with a Sword action adventure game kids to play Night in the Woods, which is like, an 11-hour narrative, explore this city, derp around town simulator, which is, sorry, Scott. So how do you control for sustainability? And for us, we need to make sure that we are hitting the same audience, but at the same time taking an outside audience to games that are outside of their genre. We have something that we call sort of outward-facing development in marketing instead of inward and isolated. So that's why you'll find us at shows. The marketing spend, sort of the money I spend going to things like PAX or Gamescom or E3, when PlayStation Experience used to exist, that was really important to us because that's our outward-facing marketing. And that is sort of allowing sort of the cult of personality to like use us to help push our games because we're very, very small. And that's sort of on an individual buy-in basis, depending on the dev team member. So that's one of the ways that we are controlling for studio sustainability. But then we also control for project sustainability. And this is where, as a biz dev person, I'm looking for strategic partnerships, and that's as a plural, S, strategic partnerships. I have a lot of games, and even within each game, I have multiple partnerships for every single one of my titles. And I use these partnerships to promote my games in a lot of ways because they're much bigger than me. And I call them our mavens, which is not a term that I coined. It's a sort of a culture term. So you're a cultural maven. It means that you're like an early adopter of something. I find it really useful to think of my strategic partnerships as mavens. So, our partnership with Xbox, with Tunic, Xbox is sort of my partnership maven. They're the ones who are currently the most excited about sort of driving this title forward. So the cool thing about sort of Maven, these people with power, is they can be platform holders. These people can be investors, fan forums, content creators, and across every title, I develop relationships that make the most sense for all aspects of a title. So when we go to launch Overland, and which we're doing right now, is we're looking for mavens in the strategy genre who are, eyeballs deep in the strategy genre, but also are excellent streamers who can sort of push the title out in front of people who want to play that genre. And these are things that I'm constantly doing on a studio and a project level to sort of even the playing field on our sustainability. So in doing all of these things, I've created a ton of baskets, and we have so many eggs, weird looking colorful ones, puppy eggs, kitty eggs, all the eggs, so many baskets, so many eggs. And an example of this, so several years ago, sort of before we made the Finji change, we were kind of several different studios. We sort of ran our iOS branch, then we ran our turnkey branch. And right after we launched our last game, Hundreds, which won awards, we realized that there was no way we could take that game that took us almost 2 years to make and port it over to anything else, because it required the touch screen in such an integral way to the game mechanic. It terrified us. We realized that at that point, because of the iOS device market, we had sort of put all of our eggs, all of our financial security kind of in one basket based on our design and the only storefronts that we could put it out on, which at that point, we had just had our second kiddo. So we were like a family of 4. We had a house in Austin, and that was a little bit too scary for us. So we had to think really long and hard about how are we going to create more baskets for us to make sure that if a game did well, we were able to take it to more places. And that's what we started sort of in 2014, and that's what y'all are familiar with Finji itself. So yeah. So there's a couple of things here, a lot of things here actually. So for studio and project sustainability, the first thing we do and have done in the past is we diversify our revenue. This is really important, especially for new indie studios starting out or an indie collaboration. They're just like, my gosh, how am I going to pay for this? It's like, well, you have a lot of options available to you. Do you have a day job, contract work? How much money do you actually need? Are you going to find investment? And for us in the past, we've basically bootstrapped everything. So our Diversify Our Revenue was to have our games out on as many platforms as possible, using our strategic partnerships to elevate them as high as we can. But then also when we needed to fill in the gaps, we took on a lot of turnkey contract work. So we've worked with sort of the entertainment industry on advertising contracts. And we've also worked with, our last big contract was with a STEAM grant with the University of Utah. So this makes the general sort of financial uncertainty of games, which is I launch and then I don't make any money for the next 3 years until I launch another game. It means that we have launches, but then we keep bumping up our bottom line enough that we're able to sort of carry more employees. And we've done that, with our publishing projects, our strategic partnerships, our contract work. And that is a safer way for me. I am much more comfortable doing it that way because I know that I have a lot of baskets right now. And if one of them fails, I'll be okay. Because my background in not having a lot of money, I need to have that sort of security dug out for me. There's another thing, and I run into this a lot. Loans actually freak me out because I have to pay those back, and I have to pay those back at a premium. So I see, and I get asked a lot, and I mentor a lot of friends on, should I take out this investment? Should I seek investment? Should I do this? And it always kind of comes down to are you comfortable with the fact that that investment is someone else's money and it's not free? It will pay for you, but you have to pay it back. So we've taken out very few loans over the years. As a matter of fact, we've taken out one, and that was just a bridge loan between the end of some funding and the beginning of some other funding on a project, on some turnkey stuff. So I'm very careful with how much money I have to owe other people. And to do that, to make sure that I can actually bootstrap the projects, is I cut scope, we cut budget, and we do the math. And the math is all capitalized because when you create your budgets, you need to make sure that you are thinking through how many copies of the game that you're going to sell and at the revenue rate you're going to receive. So if you sell $100 on, I don't know, Steam, you're only going to see $70 of that. And maybe that's 10 copies. It's important to think about how many copies you're going to sell at full price, which is very important. And how many of those do you need to sell to cover the budget that you're expecting to need? And when you start getting up into I have a $500,000 budget, you're looking at a lot of copies that you have to push at full price. So it's very, very important that if you're looking at studio and project sustainability, and this is something that I've learned over, the last 20 years, is you got to do the math. Always, always, always open up a shitty Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet or whatever and run some numbers. And run them at full price. And then run them at, I'm going to sell all of these during a sale at 70% off. How many copies do I need to push? And then ask around and see if those numbers are even reasonable. I guarantee you, probably based on most of the budgets that I see, they're not reasonable at all. You should probably cut them by 1/10. All of our budgets, and Overland is higher than this now, but the majority of our budgets run like 30 to 40,000 units. Because I know I can sell that many copies across all of my platforms. Overland's a little bit higher now because I'm supporting more platforms than I intended from the beginning, but I have accounted for that in my budget numbers. And the last thing, especially when you're talking about business relationships and studio and project sustainability, you have to rein in your personal fandom. This comes up a lot, which is you need to be careful that you don't let your nostalgia and your fandom of games get in the way with a very good opportunity. So a lot of times there's sort of pointless prejudice against various consoles. It's possible that your best biz partner champion might be a console that you don't play. It might be on a device that you don't own or a business model that you don't like. And it's important to keep an open mind when you are approaching people to sort of have studio and project sustainability.